Right, I'm going to transition over to this because I need to come out of studio mode for this. Greetings, everybody. We will be with you momentarily and start properly and normally. And I just need to do that. There we go. People's faces. Everybody exists.
Yay!
I've got the labels in the right place. Nobody is called Person 3. So
I like existing.
I'm organised. I'm not running 2 podcasts back to back and starting 10 minutes late because it took me longer than I expected.
You know who else likes existing? Mr. Eyeball.
Oh yes, he does. And we will talk about that in a minute. Yes. So the US cover is actually infinitely cooler, but that's the UK cover, so that's what we got. So that's the one I used, because that's the one I have.
Right. I had the red cover, but I had to take it back to the library a week and a half ago.
I have a Kindle edition, so...
Yeah. I had to purchase mine. Sadly, wasn't available in UK libraries. Or at least in our local libraries. I may harass them and maybe donate this copy to them because I think it should be in there. But yes, welcome to episode 2 of Babbling Books. Tonight we will be discussing The Girl with Ghost Eyes by M.H. Boroson. Apologies for the slightly delayed stream. Delayed a week because of illness, and then delayed 10 minutes starting because I tried to run 2 streams back to back. I'm clever. I'm a clever man. So, unfortunately, our third guest is unable to join us tonight, so it will just be the 3 of us. But hopefully we've got some nice insights for this book for you, and as ever we would absolutely love chat to join in with our discussions. You're up on screen there. You're on stream, so Twitch wouldn't have done an email push so because I didn't actually take the stream down. That's probably a good point. I should probably at least post a thing. Right, I can't think and type at the same time. Right, something posted to Twitter at least. Yes, so Mel can't be with us tonight, but joining me, our first returning guest, on only episode 2 as well, I'm quite impressed, the lovely Darlene Famara, who insisted on joining the panel for this one because she's studied Chinese language and literature and has lots of things to say about the content of this book and is happy she can use this. And also joining us is Binary Girl, as you may know her on Twitter or Twitch. We know her as Lindsay. Glad that you've come along as well. And I'm looking forward to hearing what you've got to say about this as well, because I kind of shoehorned you into doing this. Like, let me tell you all about this book. Let me buy this book for you, and then you can read this book and talk about it on my podcast.
It's that powerful of a book.
It was a good book, so...
So yes, so yeah, I have been bribing people to come on this podcast. So, you know, if maybe when we do pick the next book, maybe I'll have to bribe some more people. I'm just saying, but I would love more people to come on and for more people to talk about.
Join the cast. You'll get books.
Yes, there is literally no downside.
Yeah, well. You have to appear on camera and talk to me for an hour. That's generally a downside for most people.
So if you suffer from stage fright like I do, there's kind of a downside.
Yeah.
I definitely haven't been panicking all week.
Yeah. Anyway, the before we get started talking about the book, last time we picked a book at the end of the podcast, just completely at random from the list. But then I was reminded that I wanted to make chat interaction a big part of this, and have you guys to talk about the book as well. And so what I want to do is give you a little bit more of a chance to influence which book we read next. So in addition to now having a chat link to the book suggestions in chat now, you can see it's !suggest. We also have a link to the Goodreads group where I try and post all the information as well, just so we can keep track of dates and things like that. But new for this stream is, before this stream started, I picked 3 different books from the list. And you guys get to vote which of the 3 we read. So these were all picked at random from the list. And the 3 that were picked were American Psycho, which was suggested by Soso Sundere, Court of the Air by Stephen Hunt, which is a book I own but have not yet read, which is a steampunk type book, which is quite interesting. I will absolutely be putting that in the YouTube description. I was a little bit delayed on that before. Absolutely, this is a failsafe against Metal Gear Solid. Yes, Court of the Air was suggested by a uni friend of mine. And the last one we have is Shards of Honor by Lois McMaster Bujold, which is a sci-fi novel, which I've heard of Lois McMaster Bujold before, but I have not read this.
I love the series that's in.
Yeah. So I'm kind of looking forward to that. And that was suggested by Havoc4, who is a member of my Star Trek RPG group. So yes, those are the 3 books that are available for people. Court of the Air is currently winning at the moment, but voting for that will be open all throughout the stream. Please, if new people join in as we're going, please do fire off those commands. They're all available to you guys to use at any time. So fire those off, let people know where the links are, so they're all available, and then we'll have a look at the end of the stream, see which one has won, and we will that will be our book for February. And yeah, so that's the plan with that. So, Girl with Ghost Eyes. The basic plot outline for this is a young woman in 1890s San Francisco in Chinatown. She is the daughter of a Chinese exorcist, for want of a better word. And
basically a Taoist wizard priest kind of thing.
But she's also, she does this role in her own right. She's attacked in her father's temple, which sets her off on a quest of sorts, dealing with various spirits that inhabit San Francisco, trying to defeat an evil sorcerer who is summoning an ancient evil. And so yes, that's sort of a very basic plot outline. And yeah, one of the first things that we were going to talk about on our list to talk about is throughout the book, the authors tried to be relatively authentic about writing names using the proper Chinese, but
they are and they're not.
Yeah, they've used
like
Mandarin.
The author says at the end of the book, most of these characters would have spoken Cantonese as their first language, but nearly all of the names are in Mandarin, which is good for me because I studied Mandarin, but strikes me as a choice without motivation.
Yeah.
The funniest thing that I noticed about these names is bok choy,
Yes.
the gambler, the leader of the rival gang. His name is Cantonese.
Yes.
Other characters say he's assimilating too much. He's chosen the name. He's going by the name of, one, an edible plant, and two, a food Americans will recognize, in addition to doing other things that are like white people. But it struck me as really funny that his is the only actual Cantonese name. In Mandarin, that vegetable is bai cai.
Yes. But yes, my assumption was... Sorry, one minute. My assumption was being able to use Pinyin made it easier to transcribe them into English. But then he's also used Pinyin with all of the diacritics stripped off. So, makes it a little bit harder for some of the pronunciations. But then if you don't know all the diacritics for Pinyin...
Yeah, if you're coming from English, the tones are less of a focus, and there's nothing really in this book where you would need the tones to tell one word from another.
Yeah. Because that was one of the bits for me. Because the protagonist of the novel is Li Lin Zhan. But it took me a little while to remember how you were supposed to pronounce Zhan. And it was only when they rendered her name for the English version as Lily Chan that I remembered it should be Zhan with that correct pronunciation on the X.
It reminds me of a bit in the fourth Harry Potter book. J.K. Rowling realized everyone was mispronouncing Hermione's name, so she put in a scene where she explains to a foreign student how to pronounce it.
Yes, and So-So reckons he chose Mandarin so he could make the Mr. Yankee pun. Yes. That is absolutely, Yankee.
But it's not, that's not how it's, that's not how you say it. It's Yen Chio.
Yeah, Yen.
That is, Yen is I, Cho is ball.
Yeah.
It's not, he's not a Yankee.
But again, without the diacritics, you do read it and you just anglicize it as Yankee. Or at least in my brain, I did exactly the same thing initially.
I kind of want to be a pedant about spelling, but nah, not the time.
Lindsay, you wanted to say something there?
No, I did the same thing. I have no experience with any Asian language anyway, so I was just, Mr. Yankee, okay.
Yeah.
My
experience is working with a few Chinese people and needing to pronounce a couple of names and learning how to say "zhe," and that was about it.
谢谢.
I've never claimed to have great pronunciation.
没关系. Don't worry about it.
But yes, and one of the reasons I was actually really happy to get 3 ladies for the panel initially, and we've still got 2 of them, fortunately, was because it is about a female protagonist, and it is by a male author as well, which was kind of interesting. There's always the danger that male authors... there's been the meme going around recently about how male authors write ladies, and certainly for me at least, I thought she was a proper character, really well written, really well rounded.
Yeah, he writes her as a person, not specifically as a woman, but he does. I think he does a good job with the people who react to her who interact with her solely based on who she married and who her father is.
Yes.
There was the one guy, it was Tom Wong, I think, who we think he's a friend, but after a while we realize he's gone over to the dark side, and so to speak, and he only cares about her insofar as she is an extension of her husband.
Yes.
And
Tom Wong's actually an interesting character as well, because again, we're only ever given his anglicized name as Tom Wong.
Mm-hmm. But really, the moments where she is just sick and tired of all the men around her treating her as a pawn, or her body as their battleground. I think she says that explicitly about her father and Liu Qiang. fighting over her, not even as if she's an object, but as if she's a piece of territory.
Yes.
And that's part of her motivation to act is about being seen as a person in her own right.
Yes.
Which
Liu Chang being the evil sorcerer that they're fighting.
Which in the end she is.
Mm.
She doesn't end up as a prostitute.
Yes.
Which is, when I put it like that, it sounds like less of a triumph than it felt like.
Mm. But yes, I think she goes on a very interesting journey through this. She seems, the way she's written, she's always had a very powerful streak of trying to sort of have her own independence. She's trying to be a Daoshan master in her own right.
Even at the beginning,
yeah.
when she falls for Liu Chang's trick to get her cut off from her body, it's because she wants to be able to say that she made a decision.
Mm.
That she didn't have to ask. She didn't have to wait for her father to come home and ask him.
Yes. What did you think, Lindsay?
It was interesting when she got to the point of being, okay, no, I've had it, I'm just doing this myself.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not, because for a large part of the book, she is just doing things that she thinks she should do.
Mm.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think part of this, she's growing apart from her father and her community in a lot of ways, and one of them is she goes to her father's enemies for help with Liu Chang, both the tiger demon Shuaihu, who has an awesome name.
Yes.
Nearest I could figure it means handsome tiger.
Yeah.
And Bok Choy, whose name is slightly less awesome.
His name took me out of the book every time.
Yes.
And even in the end, her finally defeating the monster and earning the... She still has this conflict between impressing her father and doing what it takes to triumph, to overcome that. Because on the one hand, her father can ordain her to higher levels of Daosha, and he does because she's done things his way. But she can only defeat the monster by learning the forbidden 5-touch death.
Yeah.
From the evil sorcerer.
Yeah, she's very much a person of, she will use whatever means necessary to get the job done, which I liked. I liked that she was pragmatic about it.
Yeah, but that she also considers, she thinks about how this will put her between and outside. There's a word they use for her at the end, argueza, two spirits. She is of both the light side and the dark side, both the Chinese and the American.
Yeah.
She is
the spirit world and the ordinary world as well.
Yes. Yeah, that really resonated with me. Growing up Jewish, this resonated with me. Being, trying to fit in, but also maintain my own identity, stick to my community, but also keep up with the world. That was powerful.
Yeah. Chat is bringing up an interesting topic as well. They're saying that initially she sees herself a little bit more as an extension of her husband, and sort of slowly overcomes that to become more of her own person as she goes through. Also talking about here about her father's disapproval, and that he deliberately sort of holds back her power, because as we discover in the final climactic battle, she starts out as a level 2 priest, and I think it goes up to level 8. Her father is level 7, and he has the ability to bring her up to that level at any point he deems her worthy. And he's deliberately kept her to level 2 for a long time. He only starts to raise her level, which he does very, very quickly. He says 2 incantations, and suddenly she's 8 times as powerful or something.
Yeah.
You double each level you go up.
When she's suddenly being useful.
Yeah, she's being useful. Her father is shot and injured on the floor. This sorcerer is so much more powerful than her, and it's like his last resort. That's when he starts to increase her power level, not at any other point in the book.
And then in the end, he still can't get over himself. She killed the demon. He should be happy for her about this. He should congratulate her. Maybe even level her up again. Instead, he disowns her because of how she did it.
Yes.
But by then she doesn't need him anymore, which is nice.
Yeah, and it's really nice that she overcomes that, because one of the things we're thinking about here as well is, obviously, she's between these two worlds. And one of the big parts of the Chinese world, particularly during this sort of time period, is the idea of face, you don't want to lose face, you don't want to shame yourself, you don't want to shame your family, you need to get respect from people. And
a lot of people's motivations in this book are about preserving face with their own factions.
Yeah. So a lot of what actually motivates her along this quest initially is preserving face for her father. And then as she gets a bit deeper, she discovers that her side won't help her because they want to save face. Which is why she goes to Bok Choy, who represents the modern Chinese American, who is less concerned with face, is willing to help her for a price, as we discover.
And on the way, she develops her own face, which is independent of anybody else.
Yeah.
So I want to address your comment that Bok Choy is a racist cartoon character. Yeah, I think he presents himself. I agree. He presents himself that way on purpose, because at the end he turns around and he's actually a smart and, at least to Li Lin, relatively nice person. I mean, you see it a little bit when his daughter comes in, and just the love he has for his daughter. It's hard to think somebody who loves his kids that much is a villain, and he turns out, maybe he isn't.
Yeah.
He hires her as a bodyguard, not a call girl.
Yeah, and that's actually one of the particularly interesting things I thought about that scene there with the daughter. Is it highlights Bok Choy's relationship with his daughter is almost the complete opposite of how her father treats her.
Yeah.
And we know that her father does love her. The things her father does for her, bringing her to America in the first place, we learn is an act of great love for him. And then after that initial where she falls for the sorcerer's trap, and is stranded in the spirit world, her father gouges out his eye to save her. That's how we get Mr. Eyeball. And
But is that to save? There's always this question hanging over that. Is that to save her or to save his own face?
Yeah, damaging his own face to save face. I believe was
yes,
even commented on.
I wrote that down too. Chemistry? Yes. Bok Choy is the veterinary of Chinatown.
Yep.
You remember from anybody who wasn't here last week, we talked about Lord Vetinari, the scheming patriarch of Ankh-Morpork, who nevertheless runs the town better than anybody else could.
Yep. And it's very interesting, actually, Bok Choy, again, for talking about face, because Bok Choy, as we discover, really doesn't care that much about face, to the point where he and his staff have bets with each other, and whoever loses the most bets on a particular day has to dress up as a whore the next day.
Yeah,
and
Bok Choy is really interesting. Like, he doesn't care about face, but he doesn't really appear to care about Western approximations of the sort of social standing things. The whore of the day
kind of rebelled
thing is
completely against it. And so when we first find out about the whore of the day, it's one of his crew, it's one of his goons. When she goes back later, it's Bok Choy himself. He's the one who lost the bets. And so
wasn't it he bet on her doing something and lost, and he respects her more than really the people who respect Li Lin in this story are Bok Choy and some of the spirits.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of very interesting, actually, going into the spirits, because we meet several different spirits across the course of the book. Mr. Eyeball being a very critical one, who is literally
He's
made
the
from
comic-
her father's eyeball. He's the comic relief.
And then he's sort of, yeah, comic relief sidekick. I love the mental image of him taking a bath in a hot cup of tea.
Yep.
That was one of my favourite things.
Oh yeah. At the
And
end, and that as she goes back and forth about whether or not to follow her father's instructions and kill him. As she grows distant from her father, she becomes more and more attached to Mr.
His
Eyeball. Yeah. And Mr. Eyeball can see things now that he could not when he was in Leland's father's face.
Yep. And the thing I love is Mr. Eyeball's whole purpose, whole being, the one instruction he was given when he was created was save Li Lin.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what he does over and over and over again throughout the course of the book. Even there's that beautifully moving scene where she tries to both save Mr. Eyeball and carry out her father's instructions. She exercises him somewhere where he's going to be safe and he won't just immediately die.
Mm-hmm. In the ghost market.
In the ghost market. And he still comes back to save her at the end.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a really lovely sort of scene with that. But then it's
And
quite interesting as well.
Even better at the end, she makes pockets for him.
Yes, so he can ride
That
around
Oh,
with
yeah, I
her.
forgot about that.
The cutest.
And yes, I agree with you 100%, So Sundere. He would make the best Studio Ghibli character.
Yeah. Speaking
That
of-
alone... Sorry, that alone is the reason I need to see this as a movie.
Oh yeah. Speaking of cute things, can we talk about Malar for a moment?
Yes.
The
I
cat
love
spirit?
Mawa.
Is such this author must have cats.
Yes, absolutely, 100%. And I love the origin story of Mao, because again, it's like when she first encounters him, he's just trapped as an ordinary cat being beaten up by some kids in an alleyway.
Mm-hmm.
But because she has the ghost eyes, because she can see into the spirit world, she sees that he is actually a spirit trapped in a form. And she knows that her father trapped him. So she goes and she undoes the bindings on the container that holds Mao's power, which is something you don't want to say too fast, and unleashes his power. And that, to me, is one of the very early signs of her defiance of her father, even quite some time before the book starts, of she was willing to do this to protect the spirit. And because she protected the spirit, she ends up with a friend and an ally who it helps her periodically.
And maybe
through the book.
even more than one friend, because he helps her find things.
Yes, absolutely. And again, I would say he's probably, in his own words, he's not necessarily her friend. Cats don't have friends, but he definitely respects her.
As she feeds him, like,
Yes.
was it the ghosts of fish or something?
The ghost of mice.
Nice.
Because that's one of
Paper mice.
the lovely things that they bring out from Taoism is one of the traditions is burning objects to give to the dead. So she starts the book actually burning some paper clothing for her husband, so he has some new clothing in the land of the dead. But because she's got the ghost eyes, she can see into the spirit world. She watches the items she's just burned take their spirit form and enter the spirit world. And so
One of the things I love about that early sequence is she does this stuff. She does it very matter-of-factly. She doesn't waste any time explaining to us or convincing us that ghosts exist. They're just there.
she just
This is
does
her
it.
world.
This is what she does. And so she makes some paper mice for Maua, burns them to make them spirit mice, and then Maua gets to hunt them and eat them. And that was a lovely little scene of just something that he wanted to do.
There's also Jojo, the
Yes,
seagull.
The seagull. The three-eyed spirit seagull. Which I thought was a lovely image, actually, of a seagull with a third eye just watching you. As somebody who lives in a coastal town, I
me
can
too.
totally see these sort of... The the sort of the seagulls that do just sit on a lamppost and watch you go by and are studying the world.
Because humans can see them, can't they? They just can't see the third eye.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's correct.
So they just think, oh, seagull.
Yep. So
Can we talk
to us,
about
they're
yin?
no different.
Can we talk about yin eyes?
Yes, so the title of the book is The Girl with Ghost Eyes. Throughout the book, it's always referred to as yin eyes, which is the ability to see into the spirit world. She has too much yin, not enough yang.
The thing is, yin is associated with femininity and yang with masculinity. So that I suppose that would make being able to see and interact with spirits women's magic, which is something that the doctor's wife goes into a bit.
Yes.
She's from she's not Han. I don't remember what tribe she said she was.
No, I don't remember, but yes. Han Chinese being
she's-
the main Chinese tribe, but there are many, many others that got conquered and taken over.
And she
We think
tells
of
us
China as one homogenous blob, and it's really not.
that China thinks of China as one homogenous blob is part of the problem.
Yeah.
But
we would
the
rather
the
tribes
doctor's
don't
wife, the doctor's wife, does she ever get a name?
No, she's only ever Mrs. whatever the doctor's name is, and I can't remember what his name is now.
That's a shame. That's a shame, and it's also kind of it's fitting and it's telling. But she says that in among her people, the women do the magic, and they make friends with spirits who protect them. Which this is horrifying to Li Lin because she's been brought up to believe that all spirits are bad, and that's even though she's friends with some of them by this point.
Yeah, and that's part of the journey she goes on. Definitely is learning that not all spirits are bad. You can help
And
some.
Mm-hmm. But she's offered this chance to learn the doctor's wife's kind of magic, and she rejects it because she's still too determined to do what her father wants. There's a what if for you.
Yeah, she's only ever referred to as Mrs. Wei.
Yeah, chemistry. Good point. I wouldn't want to. She has to physically injure herself to communicate with the spirits, and yeah, I can understand not wanting to do that.
But yes, I did think that was interesting. I know it's always said that people with yin eyes always suffer a terrible life and die early, but I can't remember if they said it's unique to women or not. I don't remember that reference in there.
I don't know, but among the doctor's wife's people, it's considered a gift.
Yes. And then the other character which I loved is the Tiger Man, Shu
Oh
Hai.
yeah, Shuai Hu.
Oh, yeah.
Shuai Hu, sorry. My pronunciation is the worst, and I'm reading it there, and I still can't pronounce it properly. But yes, so this is literally a tiger. He's a spirit tiger, though. And spirit tigers have this interesting property from... I'm not sure which legend they come from, but whenever they kill a person, that person's ghost haunts them until they kill the next person. So normally, because that person's ghost wants to move on and go to the land of the dead and be free, they encourage the tiger to kill again. And so the tiger keeps on killing and killing and killing and killing. Until one day, he kills a Buddhist monk. And I love that it's Buddhist, and I love the interaction between the Taoists and the Buddhists. But because it's a Buddhist monk, he decides that instead of getting the tiger to kill again, he will give up his chance to be reborn and to go to the spirit world, and that to stop the tiger from killing again. And so he stays with the tiger, he acts as a voice of a conscience, and he helps the tiger grow. He teaches the tiger Buddhism, and the tiger eventually uses his power to take human form.
And he genuinely changes his attitude and his lifestyle. He wants to avoid killing like an alcoholic wants to avoid beer.
Yeah. To the point where he actually makes Li Lin promise not to kill anybody in exchange for his help. And his biggest fear is accidentally killing somebody and losing his voice of conscience and having somebody else's ghost haunt him.
And going back to being a monster.
And I thought that was a lovely character. And
yeah, there's in the chat is saying this felt like a cameo from a different story. That sounds to me like, backdoor pilot for the Adventures of Shuaihu.
He very much feels like he wants to Boroson wants to have him more of a character in the next book, and that felt so clumsy at the end where she goes back to see him and he says, "I can't see you again, I lust for you," and I was just like,
I desire you.
Yeah.
You could have left that bit out and he just shows up again because he's a character we already wanted to know more about, and he just wasn't in the book enough for my liking. And then you just throw in this little awkward bit at the end, and it's just like, we could have done with that. That was one of the few places where I was like, yeah,
I'd forgotten
this is a
about
male
that
writer.
moment.
And it's like, yeah, this is a bloke, and he can't really handle that bit very well.
Yeah.
So.
Well, at least she isn't interested.
Yeah. She just sees him as a friend and an ally. And I loved learning his story, and I loved, as she learns his story, how her attitudes start to change towards him. He becomes less of a monster and more of a man in her eyes, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah. And I feel like that's a lot of her journey, that beings she considered monsters, including Bok Choy, become more like people. And speaking of that, So pointed something out, that her attitude, Leland's attitude towards the doctor's wife is that, our way won, so we're clearly superior. That's sort of the way that we think of the Han Chinese acting towards their ethnic minorities. But that's also kind of ironic, and that's how white Americans think about the people in Chinatown. That she's a victim of racism. Certainly, her husband was shot by racist police, which kind of topical right now. But that she doesn't get, at least not here, she doesn't get the connection between how people treat her and her family, how white people treat her and her family, and how she treats the doctor's wife.
Yeah. Sort of before we move on, I wanted to touch on some of the other spirits just briefly, because although we have these sort of important characters throughout, there's some really creepy spirits in there. The description of the parade of spirits, all the different ones that she sees, I know a lot of them have been pulled from different bits of Chinese folklore, and a couple of Japanese ones as well. I think he snuck in there.
Yeah, the author's note said he cherry-picked quite a bit from different traditions.
But the way he described them, the way he wrote about them, was just really interesting, and I loved that whole passage of describing all the different spirits.
The Banshee, particularly, and the Blue Monk.
Yes, the Blue Monk was great. Although the ones that creeped me out the most were the spider babies.
I think I was most creeped out by the Banshee, I think.
Yeah. There's spider babies at one point that are sent to try and kill her father while he's in the hospital. And they cover the door in a web, and they trap part of his spirit in a web as well. So they're slowly draining his life force away. And nobody knows what's wrong with him because nobody else can see them. Yeah, and because they've done this to everybody in the hospital, the doctor just assumes that it's some kind of plague or outbreak, and he's about to quarantine the hospital. And she's just like, no, it's spider babies, I'll just get rid of them all. Because she's no nonsense like that.
Yeah. I don't know, this Spider Baby, I think Spider Baby, I think of the mutant toys in Toy Story.
Yes. That's basically how I envisaged them in my head, which was part of the problem.
Yeah, but I don't associate that with being creepy anymore.
But yes, I think I like that he's cherry-picked sort of different aspects from some of these religions, and I like that he's acknowledging, although they're Taoists, that the Buddhists exist, that they have their tradition as well. And Leland and her father, at least, although they refer to the Buddhists as bullies, they do at least appear to have some modicum of respect for the Buddhists, because she talks about the differences between their styles of kung fu, the Shaolin versus what she does. And yeah, it's interesting to see that respect there, as opposed to when she sort of encounters Dr. Wei's wife and her religion, where it's very much more an act of repulsion because of their beliefs. So yeah, you mentioned that there was sort of an aspect of racism going on, and this is it's a really interesting setting for the book. It's turn of the century Chinatown in San Francisco.
And yet how little has changed in the last 100 years.
It's an enclave. You've got groups of people who haven't learned English, and some of which are proud of not learning English as well. I got that kind of impression from, particularly when she's talking about her husband, that he never learned English. You get the impression that he was proud of that fact, that he was staying Chinese and staying true to his roots.
And in the end, that's why he died, because the police didn't bother to consider that maybe this person who does not speak English is a person.
And so that probably bears talking about, actually, because it does have such modern resonance. Her husband is a much higher level priest than she is. I think he's still at trainee level. He's not a full priest.
It's not just his inability to adapt. So
Yeah.
It's also white people's inability to adapt.
Yeah,
Did I say
it's
this
on
is a
both
white
sides.
person?
And so the husband is trained. She acknowledges he's one of the best at their style of kung fu. He's really talented. 4 white dock workers who just got laid off go into Chinatown to make trouble. They try and attack the husband, and he just dodges every blow, so they all end up falling around on the ground. He manages to disarm them, but somebody called the police, and the police arrive at that critical moment where he's just disarmed these 4 people. They're lying on the floor, and he's holding a weapon. So he doesn't speak Chinese. He doesn't speak English. He only speaks Chinese. So he doesn't know what they say when they say drop the weapon. So they just shoot him. And that's how her husband dies. And yeah, it's as I says, Rocket was full level 7 because her father loved him like a son. That was actually a very interesting relationship, which we'll come to in a moment. But yes, so he dies because of he doesn't understand English, but also because, as we're seeing still today, the police see somebody foreign holding a weapon or what they think is a weapon. They don't bother to evaluate the situation. They just shoot.
I don't know if foreign is even the word. They see someone who is not like them holding what they think is a weapon.
And that's more the term foreign I was using, is it's not like us. It's something different. But yes.
Just to tie this even tighter into current events. I should mention, I'm pretty sure today is Martin Luther King's birthday.
Yes, it is. Yes.
So I think that this is a good conversation to be having.
Yeah. And yeah, and you see this, and you see this in some of the attitudes around Chinatown and the desire to be quite insular inside Chinatown and shy away from some of the Americans who still don't really understand stuff. And then you see like Bok Choy and his side of Chinatown, where they're understanding the need to try and adapt and change instead of staying with the traditional ways.
And the thing is, Bok Choy's way is thriving.
Yes.
The Leland was always told, good for nothing ruffians, they're never going to do anything but make trouble. But then she finds out he's actually a rival, an actual rival to the local community leaders.
Yes.
I say community leaders in air quotes because they're sort of a gang, they're sort of the mafia, but it's really, that doesn't necessarily make them bad guys, because it's important that they provide public services that the all-white city government won't in Chinatown.
Yes. Yeah, and as Chemistry says, Bok Choy is actually very happy to play to the stereotypes as well. He's not afraid to play up a little bit to make people feel more at home and more comfortable with him.
And this seems to be this seems to be a path to prosperity. This whole tension in this book between between the traditional and the modern, between the insular Chinese and the assimilated American. I don't think there's a clear answer to it, but Bok Choy is doing something right.
He's open-minded.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that makes
That's
this
what
very
gets her
interesting.
dad in trouble.
Something very interesting about the setting and the time period chosen, because it does have that crossover between the old China and the new China, and certainly China before communism, whereas having that real boom period.
Mm-hmm.
But my question, which I put in the notes, was, would this work as a contemporary novel? Because we still have a lot of those racial tensions. I think what you would lose is probably the side more of the traditional versus the modern.
Yeah.
And whether that would impact the story too much. But there's so many resonances with contemporary.
You could certainly write similar novels about other ethnic minorities.
Yes.
But I don't think you could write a novel about that place and those people in this time and have it resonate in the same way. Just
yeah. The
problems haven't gone away. They're just in different places happening. History doesn't repeat itself, but it does rhyme.
Yes.
It's like poetry.
Is what I'm trying to say.
Sorry.
Yeah, Lindsay?
Yeah.
No, I was being facetious. Ignore me.
Okay.
But yes, I think that's one of the things as well. So he did a very good job of describing the city and the cultural tensions going on and building up that picture throughout, which is part of what makes the world very interesting for me. Is sort of how that's all tying together. So yes, we mentioned earlier about the father's relationship with Rocket, and how he treated Rocket like the son he never had, almost to the detriment of Li Lin.
Definitely to the detriment of Li Lin.
And yeah, it's kind of it's very interesting to see that, and that still echoes and mirrors things we see today of favouring the sons, and the daughters are just there to do the work and whatever. They'd much rather have sons.
Yeah, and I suppose that's why Li Lin has to go to Bok Choy in the end, I guess, because he doesn't see her as, a potentially unwanted child, as a useless daughter, as a widow.
Because that's one of the
who
things.
Refuses to remarry.
In almost everybody she encounters, she's referred to as the Daoshan's daughter, even though she's a Daoshan herself.
Mm-hmm.
It's only a couple of characters, Tiger Man and Bok Choy, who refer to her as Daoshan and not the Daoshan's daughter.
Seeing her as a person.
Yeah.
Not as person adjacent.
Yes. So, Chemistry and Soso Sundari are talking about something towards the end of the novel here, which is that one of the things about the evil sorcerer guy is he only has one arm, because back when he was learning evil sorcery things, Li Lin's father cut one of his arms off as punishment.
Can we talk about the relationship between the evil sorcerer and Leland's father?
Yes, that's an interesting relationship because they were both students at the same time. The other students saw the evil sorcerer as weak.
But he wasn't evil then. He was just different.
He was just different. So they bullied him, pissed in his face, and eventually they drove him out.
The same cycle of misunderstanding and violence that we see elsewhere in the book has set off this whole plot by having Leland's father be one of the violent and intolerant ones.
Yeah. And
then
it's that whole thing over again.
From Liu Chang's perspective, this is a revenge story.
Yeah. It turns out the whole reason he's raising this evil spirit, a giant 100-foot tall skeleton made from 100 corpses, is because it's one of the ancient forbidden spells. And he's trying to prove how strong and powerful he is. Everything he's done up to this point in the book is to prove his power.
It's very like what Li Lin herself is doing. I think the parallels there are interesting. But the reason that Li Lin succeeds where Liu Chang is doomed to fail is that Liu Chang doesn't quite get the whole balance thing. You know, Taoism and Buddhism both are about, you know, seeking balance between contradictory things or outside the notion of contradiction altogether. He goes whole hog, head over heels into the dark arts.
Yeah.
Whereas Li Lin learns gradually from her experiences and the people around her how to incorporate little bits of both her cultures, both ways of doing things. All of the places that there's two ways to do things, she could take a little of A and a little of B, and that makes her capable of saving the day.
And yes, so what we're getting to now is, so he had his arm cut off, and we later learn that he's had it replaced several years later with an evil spirit, a snake with red eyes that attacks and eats people and has a mind of its own. What we get tantalizingly at the end, when she chops the arm off and the snake dies, is what's left is a single white hair. And we learn slightly earlier in the book that the reason Li Lin and her father fled to America was everybody in their village was wiped out by an evil spirit with white hair. Li Lin only survived because she hid down a well, and her father survived because I think he was away at the time, which is why he wasn't able to protect. And it's implied that if the snake wasn't made by that white-haired spirit, it was at least related to somehow. And so points out that maybe the attack on the village was one of the evil sorcerer's first attempts to attack. And
that makes sense. How long has Liu Qiang been actively seeking revenge as opposed to preparing to seek revenge?
Yeah. And so yeah, it's kind of interesting, and I suspect if he does write a sequel, which, given that at least on Amazon UK this was listed as Li Lin #1, and I know he's written a small short story to follow up, which I haven't managed to get a copy of to read yet.
Here's hoping it's not a romance with Handsome Tiger.
Yes. So I'm hoping that there will be a second one. I did have a look at Boroson's Tumblr, and I believe it's potentially due out at the end of this year. He did have an interim title for it, but I can't remember what it was called. I should have had that in my notes, and I completely forgot to add it. So I'm kind of looking forward to that, and that's probably going to end up on my Amazon wish list to remind me to check for the end of the year. And yeah, so as we sort of head towards the closing, was there anything chat wanted to bring up that we didn't really mention? And while we give chat their 30 seconds to catch up, I have to say, overall, going into this, I was definitely intrigued by the blurb. When I saw it on Soso's list, I thought it was kind of interesting. I absolutely loved it. I'm glad I was able to get a couple of people interested in reading it. I know I managed to lure Lindsay in by tweeting about it a lot. And I'm definitely going to be loaning this out to a couple of family and friends, and I'm definitely going to be trying to convince the local library to get hold of this. So, definitely convince me.
Comment from Chemistring. Leland says at some point that the snake seems to hate her particularly. And I'm wondering, is that because of her relationship to her father, because she's her father's child, or maybe it's because it knows she has yin eyes and or has the potential to be very powerful and thwart it?
Which is not explained, and that's kind of, I like that there's that deeper mystery and that we'll find out more in the future. So I kind of didn't mind that being left open as much. It gives you those hooks into further adventures. And so again, reiterating how cool the whole magical world is. So yeah, what did you think overall, Lindsay?
I thought it was a great book. I did get a bit frustrated with her for being maybe a little bit whiny, but I suppose that's justified up to a certain point. I did like the whole, I don't want to say juxtaposition, but I can't think of any other word, of the whole different cultures and anyone who's not us is wrong and bad, but at the same time, the people that were open-minded, like Bok Choy, were the ones who succeeded.
Yeah.
And being very insular was what killed Rocket. Why was he called Rocket? He couldn't speak English.
Yeah, his Chinese name was never given. He was only ever.
I did wonder about that.
Rocket.
Yeah, Rocket and Tom Wong. They were friends. We never hear either of their birth names.
That did make me laugh. He could speak English, but he was called Rocket with no explanation.
Yeah.
I kept imagining him as the raccoon from Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yes.
Just for no good reason. That's the only other character I know named Rocket.
But yeah, I thought it was a great book. I liked the little eyeball guy. I thought he was awesome. The parade of ghosts at the beginning was amazing. It made me think of that Clive Barker movie, which I currently can't remember the name of, with all the different monsters. And I did like that at the end, sort of, they were the ones that helped her with all the seagulls and everything.
Yeah.
So if we do get a sequel, if we do get a sequel, I hope
that would be amazing in a Ghibli movie.
Oh yeah.
Just if we do get another book, I hope it's more of her being cool and self-sufficient rather than tiger romance.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because we have enough of those books. Yeah, I enjoyed it, and I would recommend it.
Yeah. And so yeah, it's definitely it's something different, which is always refreshing as well. It's nice to have a book that grabs you, hooks you in. I actually ended up reading it in one sitting. I sat down on the Saturday morning because I was feeling a bit ill just before the stream, because I meant to read it a bit earlier, but I read it on the day that we were supposed to stream it, and I just consumed it in one sitting, didn't put it down for the whole time.
I kept going, just one more chapter before bed, just one more chapter before bed, and suddenly
and then it's 4 a.m.
Yeah.
Yeah, I started earlier than that, but yeah, basically.
I read like half the book in one go. I didn't mean to. I did what you did. I was like, all right, well, just one more chapter. Oh, it's 4 a.m.
Yes, it's like I said, it's a powerful book.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's one of the things. Definitely, the plot moves along at a pace that just keeps you going. I think it's almost the same as Lilin herself. Is that there's never that moment to draw breath and put it down. It just keeps going at this breakneck pace.
Yeah, and I think that really sells how quickly the story happens. Like this is all over a couple of days, and I think that's reflected in the pace of the storytelling.
Yeah.
Lilith doesn't get a chance to stop and catch her breath. Why should we?
Actually, just remember there is one scene I wanted to talk about, which I think was probably one of the most powerful scenes, and it's because at the start of the story, while she's in the spirit world, trapped in the spirit world, the evil sorcerer carves a spell into her body to open her body to this evil spirit. So she's kind of been sort of defiled almost by him, and it's just starting to heal. And then at the end, she gets trapped by a
Not only does the evil sorcerer carve spells into her skin, her father also does to counter those spells.
Yep. And then at the end, towards the end, and she's in this battle, the evil sorcerer unleashes a sleep spirit against her. Which,
the Scream Demon.
The Scream Demon. And it captures and engulfs her and is starting to try and eat her. And she realizes the only way to save herself is to try and carve a spell into her own skin as well. But what she ends up doing is we get this sequence of 3 really well depicted dream sequences, basically, where I think one is 2 of them are flashbacks, memories. One with when she's a young child, and one a little older, and one of them is when she first gets her yin eyes, and talks to her father about it, which is a lovely sequence in itself, of describing when his potion wears off and she decides just not to tell him because she prefers seeing the spirit world. And you just get these little moments of something slightly off because Mr. Eyeball just inserts himself at the end of the sequence to remind her she needs to keep going. And
I didn't really find the Scream Demon, the Scream Demon Dreams that compelling. Although Scream Demon Dreams might be a good name for a punk band.
Yes. But the one I liked the most, though, was the kind of the future fantasy one of Dad shows up, saves the day. Oh look, Rocket is magically alive. You can go back to how everything was.
Yeah,
and she almost gets pulled into that.
That is what did not resonate with me. I feel like I've seen that too many times in too many different stories. That the promise of the villain offers the promise of everything going back to the way it was if only you give in, and that
it was a bit tropey.
It was so a bit tropey, but at the same time, it kind of represents her journey a little bit more in that it does show you could go back to all of this, and she still manages to push forward and keep going and keep fighting despite that.
It was interesting how many contortions of reality the Scream Demon has to go through to suggest that things could go back the way it was.
Yes.
Like resurrecting Rocket.
But yeah, it's kind of I liked it as a scene because of the progression of the 3 dreams, the 2 that were flashbacks and filled in really useful bits of story, and then yes, the final one was a bit tropey, but it did.
Maybe it's just because the Scream Demon has no imagination.
Yeah. So I'm just going to pop the poll link in the chat. So if anybody has yet to vote, get your votes in now. Then we'll announce the winner for next time. So we'll be looking to get back on schedule properly next time, which means we will be looking to go on Saturday the 4th of February for the next stream. I'm going to aim to put these on the first Saturday of every month. This one ended up being on a Sunday just because of... I thought it made sense to run 2 streams, one into the other. I was wrong.
We live and we learn.
Yep. So yes, but yeah, I think one thing just remains to be said, which is thank you very much to Soso Sundare for suggesting that this novel for us. I'm absolutely grateful for your huge amount of suggestions that are currently populating our list, and I look forward to adding more suggestions from people as you come across stuff. I will remind you that our criteria for suggesting books is simply that you think it will be worth talking about. So, good books, bad books, fiction, non-fiction, poetry. As long as it's something we can read and then talk about, please put it on the list, and I will put the link in chat again. ! Suggest. That's the link to where you can submit your suggestions. And do let me know on Twitter if you liked the new method of letting you guys pick between 3. Was 3 the right number? Would you prefer more or less? Or would you prefer I just go back to just picking one at random at the end without giving you any input? Do let me know. This one will also go up on YouTube, and this one I will probably edit down to a proper podcast. I didn't for the last one because the audio was quite bad. There was a pretty horrific echo on one end, and so every time 2 of us spoke, you could hear us on somebody else's end, which was quite bad for us. So I didn't feel like putting that one up as the first podcast, but this one will probably hopefully go up. Hopefully. You know, we'll see. But I know how to edit audio, so that's a little bit easier than editing video.
And where can we find the YouTube replay?
Yep, so my YouTube channel is /Keep42 on YouTube. I use that name everywhere.
Okay.
The podcast, when it goes up, will probably go under one of my domain names that I own, most likely under beardedfool.com, but I'll promote that and throw it up to iTunes and Google Play and all the other necessary places so you can find it. But yes, the previous replay is up on YouTube. This one will be on YouTube as well. And shame you're going to miss the next one live, Ken, but it will be on YouTube, so you can always submit some comments and feedback afterwards. And please do also feel free to join the group on Goodreads. I need to turn that into a bit.ly link and make it a little bit more friendly, but do feel free to join in on there because there's discussion forums and things, so you can always submit questions, topics you think we should talk about the book if you've read along with us, even if you can't make the live stream, and I will incorporate those into my show notes as well. So let me just refresh the poll results one last time, and so it looks like our winner will be Court of the Air by Stephen Hunt, and so that will be our next book. That's with 6 votes to 2. So, thank you all very much for voting. Thank you all for reading along. I do hope you read along for the next one. I've read some Stephen Hunt, and I'm looking forward to finally reading this one and taking off the little sticker on the back that reminds me I haven't read it yet. I am that organised with my books. And so that just leaves me to thank my 2 guests. Thank you very much to Mara for all your insights on the Chinese literature. It's always great when somebody comes to me and goes, I must be part of this, I've got so many things to say. And thank you so much for coming on as well, Lindsay. I know I kind of strong-armed you and shanghaied you into this, but thank you for coming, thank you for talking. It's always great to get other people's perspectives, and it's great to actually also finally talk to you face to face, because I've spoken to you so much over the internet.
I was going to say, I have a face.
And thank you to everybody in chat for joining us and reading along and chatting. And so if you do chat along and you have opinions and would like to be on the stream, hit me up on Twitter. Just let me know and I will gladly invite you along. I'm looking forward to sort of talking to everybody, and the more people that come on, the better. I love having repeat guests as well, but if you've got opinions, come along and talk about them, and you know, it might save my voice in future if I don't have to do as much talking. So thank you all very much, and we will see you next time. Next Saturday for my stream will be the next Dregs of the Federation stream, where we'll be joined by a special guest, Rebellious Uno, and then there will be other streams planned, and I'll make sure they're all in the calendar. So thank you all for watching, and have a lovely evening. Good night.